You are now live.
Okay, where is
Excellent.
whatever? Where is the bread? Where is the toilet?
Yeah.
Where is the subway? And so the guy started teaching us a little bit of French.
French is hard.
Mm-hmm.
Huh?
French is hard.
Hard.
Yeah.
It's hard as Chinese.
Yeah, interesting. Cool.
Yeah, we like.
So,
Yeah.
my son went down to the lobby for one of the vending machines and he came back all mad. What are you mad about? He says,
What a word.
Stupid Japanese. I had to ask him
What?
in Spanish, where is it? And he answered me in French, and I thanked him in Japanese.
Nice.
That's awesome. It's a good story.
Yeah. Okay. Hey, everybody. We are live here this evening at Ozark Holistic Hangouts at Ozark Holistic Center. Thanks, everybody, for joining us here in the office and everyone that's joining us online. We will kind of, as we go through the process, like always, kind of repeat back questions just for those that are tuning in online or joining us online. And so we're going to jump in and go ahead and get started with the event tonight. As always, for anyone that joins us here in office for those or for the Holistic Hangouts, we do actually provide like a discount for anyone that joins us here for their if they come and ask questions, they get 10% off their next visit. As well, if they come and bring someone with them, then anyone new here to the office that comes to the Holistic Hangouts here in the office gets 10% off their first visit, which is pretty good. So, but we, as always, we love doing these to kind of talk more about health topics, kind of explain more. We're always open to new themes, new topics. If you guys have any suggestions or questions, please send them in to us. For those that are live, if you send them in ahead of time, we're like more likely to be able to get to them. As opposed to like here in the live thing, but that way we can talk about them there. So tonight, where we're going to start, I have my little cheat sheet here because I kind of talked through what we kind of said is the theme tonight is a particular like daily practice that I do. I have some of my clients do and have had them do over the years, and some I've had even my like kids do. That is something that, interestingly enough, I find to be very important for our health, very beneficial for our long-term health. In terms of research, it's been shown to help improve autoimmune levels as well as lower inflammation levels in the human body. And I want to give a couple actually like true like kind of statistics or numbers on that, which is pretty cool. I first got exposed to this concept by a podcast I listened to with Dr. Mark Hyman, and he was interviewing a Dr. Leonard, who is the head of immunology at the Cleveland Clinics. And he was talking about how he would have his clients that came in with different autoimmune conditions do this particular practice. And he quoted a piece of research where he said they actually took a group of people that had positive indicators in blood work for lupus, and they put them in two different categories, those that would do this practice and those that did not. And they tracked blood work over a 12-week period of time. And in the group that did this particular practice, all indicators across the board in relationship to lupus actually decreased, which is a really cool outcome. And so then the more research has been done along this field and over the years. And so we have seen with different research has come out with this particular practice. So I'm going to say what it is in a second, but that it actually, for those that do it, they can consistently report fewer health complaints. They get more positive outlook towards their life. It's also been shown to contribute to an increase just in happiness indicators in general, health, and other desirable life outcomes, also to decrease in negative effects and problematic functioning, including patients with neuromuscular disease, hypertension, cancer patients, and across the board. What it is, and I present it that way to kind of talk about some of the things that it does, because it seems very simplistic, and it is pretty simplistic, but what it is gratitude journaling. It's the process of looking at life through the things that we are like grateful for and taking the time to write those down and make a point of writing those down on a daily basis. Our subconscious is programmed to protect us. It's designed to look at things in our environment and whether they're a threat or not a threat and react accordingly. And if we start perceiving everything as threats or bad things in our life, it actually starts to create like this negative feedback loop where our subconscious thinks it's protecting us against these things that we perceive to be bad. And so things like gratitude journaling can kind of reprogram our brain to look at things from a positive standpoint and see the good things that are happening and kind of lower that sense of threat in our lives. And across the research, it has shown to accomplish that in blood work, in outcomes, and how we feel, and across the board. And so it's a pretty cool little practice. I have kind of a personal story with it with my son, even. I mean, plus the benefits I've seen with my patients and having them do it. But with my son, when he was quite a bit younger, he was about 9 or 10 years old. He was kind of hitting one of those interesting phases in life where he was like picking on his siblings all the time, kind of getting more kind of worked up and frustrated and angry than it seemed like he should. And he was starting to really kind of confront with us a little bit. And we were just trying to figure out what we could do to help him. And my wife was the one. She had this like awesome idea. She said, hey, how about we buy him a journal and every night just invite him to write down like things that he is grateful for in that journal. And he started doing that practice. And it wasn't within just like a week, we saw this like dramatic change in the way he would interact with his siblings, the way that he'd interact with us and all kinds of things. And it was awesome. And so that is what really can come from taking time to gratitude journal. Thanks for coming in and joining us. But we were just talking about gratitude journaling. And I'm going to kind of, and just the effects of it. I kind of repeat that story briefly because you've got kids yourselves. The person that just walked in. Hey, you guys got kids yourselves. I have my oldest son. He was about 9 or 10 years old, and he was starting to have issues with his siblings. They were getting these arguments and these fights all the time. I don't know if you guys have experienced this at all, with your kids. And he was also starting to kind of become more confrontational with us. And we were just trying to figure out, like, what could we do? And my wife had this amazing idea to have him. We bought him a little just like journal. And at the end of every night, he would write down, and this is the practice. This is how you do it. You just write down like 3 things that you're grateful for in that day. And there's something about actually like writing it down that has a power to it. I think a lot of times, sometimes we'll verbalize it or we'll like talk about it. But it really was an amazing thing. And within like a week's time, his interaction with his siblings like calmed down. His interaction with us calmed down. It was awesome. And we were just talking through previously some of the research that's been done on this to help show lower inflammation levels, lower autoimmune responses by just simply taking the time every day to write those things down.
Is it still calmed down?
With him?
Yeah.
Yeah. But he also fell into the practice of doing this on a consistent basis. And I don't know what, kid his age does that or not, but and so we now ended up later on getting kind of different books, even for my daughter and my other son, and myself even. I've kind of fallen into that practice because it kind of just helps like ground you in different ways. So it's a neat practice. I don't know if you have anything to add on.
I have a little bit to add to that. Yeah, I've done some of that myself at times where it's been harder in my life and found it to be very beneficial, like well before I knew there was actual research behind it. But I mean, it feels really good to do that, to focus on the positive things in your life. And expanding on that research, if you just look at anything that, there's a lot of research now when how negative thoughts can activate inflammation. It's not just this study. There's a lot of it out there. Activating inflammation, activating your immune system. And when we're talking about autoimmunity, we're talking about your immune system being overactivated. So we have a lot of patients that come in. I have 2 specifically that we do all the autoimmune protocols with their diet and their lifestyle, doing all the different things and maybe having some change here and there. Autoimmunity is really complex. And we get into the stress and how to remove those things from your life, different strategies, NET, which is what I do in office. And I've seen the biggest response from those 2 patients by working on the emotional part of it, the stress, the trauma, and things like that, and just calming down the immune system by emotionally calming it down.
Yeah.
That would be the things I would add to that.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's really cool. So, welcome guys in. What we do with these little holistic hangouts, I don't know if you've got a chance to see them online or not, but we usually start with a particular topic. Tonight was going through gratitude journaling and the benefits of that. And then we kind of open it up to any kind of health questions you guys might have, not to put you on the spot. But we have a list of other questions we can answer because we're kind of sent in questions from people, but we'd love to actually hear what things bring you in. Yeah.
And we're live on Instagram. Yeah.
How do you keep your gratitude journal from being repetitive? I think that's kind of one of the like fun explorations of a gratitude journal. I'll be the first to admit that my gratitude journal can become repetitive. I start kind of focusing on different aspects of my life in my own, and usually I'll kind of look at the areas that are kind of maybe creating the most friction in my life. For example, like my office or my work, or particular maybe interactions with certain people. I've had to, I hate to admit this, but it's true, I've had to do this with my wife sometimes, or I focus on like, hey, my interaction with my wife, and sit down, because at the end of the day, sometimes might be a little frustrated, and actually sit down and go, okay, like for the next like week, I'm going to focus on what are things that she does or characteristics of my wife, or things that, because she's an amazing person, that that I am grateful for. And so that's kind of the way I've honed my practice of gratitude journaling, is kind of analyzing and focusing on a particular target area.
And her question for the people online, did you say it back? I think
I did.
Oh,
Yeah.
you
How
did.
do you keep
Sorry,
it from being repetitive?
Yeah.
Can you do that with your spouse that's gone?
You could do that with your spouse that's gone. So the question was,
Gratitude journaling with grief journaling?
with grief journaling, yeah. The question was, could you do that with a spouse that was gone? It's kind of gratitude journaling with grief journaling, right? Because those experiences that we've had and that we've like gone through are things that we are still grateful for, and it's we have the opportunity. The brain is a very powerful thing. Of like, do we look back on our lives and the important people in our lives in a good light and in a happy light, and like solidifying that joy that comes from those events, or do we kind of, and I don't want to diminish the need for grief, but like, do we sometimes overlook at it from the grieving standpoint of what we've lost, and then that can kind of perpetuate over time, because there's a need for that and a time for that. But if we kind of let that grow too much, then the good part starts to sometimes diminish. So I can see that being a very healing practice. Yeah.
This is y'all's space, but if I could add
Yeah, please.
a question from a positive psychology standpoint, in terms of keeping it from being repetitive, if you also add why you're grateful, like if you take it, it's taking it a step further. So if you say, I am grateful for my late husband, saying or journaling why you're grateful.
One of the things I find repetitive in my gratitude prayers is my house.
Mm-hmm.
I have a house that Fred made so spectacularly beautiful for me,
Yeah.
and that's in my prayers every day.
Yeah.
But why am I grateful for my house? That's a good addition.
Yeah.
It kind of deepens us reflecting on why we're grateful for that particular thing.
I like that.
Yeah.
Just repetitive, say why.
So the addition given, which I appreciate that greatly, is if it gets too repetitive, look at why. The statement is there. The example given was, grateful for your home or your house. But like, what is it about your home and your house that you're grateful for? So why? Why is it there?
That's good.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm just curious as it pertains to inflammation. Like, I don't know what parts we missed.
Yeah.
It's something I've wrestled with due to diet and just maybe stress too.
Sure.
There's been moments where my wife is like, "Well, geez, I can tell you really look great," and then I'll travel a week later, like I look back bloated, and so I've kind of yo-yo with my weight over the years, and I have a goal to get my weight down and just be expressed out. And we have young kids, a 9, 7, and 6-year-old. I'm just curious of what, obviously eating healthy food, exercising, rest, and some of those similar things, but I tend to do that for like a week or two, and then I kind of go right back, and it happens pretty quickly sometimes, like 2-3 days. Or if I can tell you're not eating something, like I don't know if it's dairy or what, but I'm just curious of what input or feedback would y'all give to someone who has seen inflammation kind of like go back and forth in a matter of days.
So that's like a perfect question. You just opened up all the questions right there.
Does
So
that make sense? Like,
yeah, it does make I see that this is a common thing.
Yep.
So I'll repeat it and then let you take over, Cole. But
Sure.
So the comment was, hey, I often struggle with inflammation, and this is something we see a lot, like something where you actually see it kind of yo-yo with even a very short period of time, within like a couple of days. Like you'll keep clean everything up, things will be good. You'll feel it come down if you have to travel, or if you kind of get off your routine, or if you get off with your eating habits within just a very short period of time. That kind of swelling, that bloating can come back. People, not sure how it manifests for you, but in clinic, I hear people talk about it in terms of sometimes like in the joints and like aches in the body. I hear people literally like in the belly. Yeah, some people will see like I look like I'm like 6 months pregnant, you know, and then the next morning it can be like back down to normal. And these are all the different things that kind of can present with that. And so inflammation as a general topic, and you didn't miss much. All I was talking about is one potential tool would be using gratitude journaling, and that it can help, but it's definitely not the complete solution to that. So you want to grab it?
And he was asking also too, like, could it be stress? Could it be food? And he was tying in the weight with inflammation, right?
Yeah.
So so my follow-up question is, when you're saying inflammation, are you using that interchangeably with like your weight fluctuates, or do you feel like pain?
Like
or
my wife is so, she's like, what she has like pictures, like I've looked at a picture like 2 weeks ago, you know, my face looks skinny like yours.
Okay.
And then I might see my face like look bloated, and then I notice my stomach growl, or even change in how my clothes feel. And I'm like, sometimes it's a matter of less than a week. And I was like, wow, what's changing so significantly that I'm seeing these drastic changes?
So seeming like it's both, like there's some weight gain, but also just like puffiness to the face and stuff like that. Yeah, and so your question is really like, what could it be, or how, or is it more to like, how do I change? Is it like you're having trouble sticking to a habit? Both. So there's a lot of things to look at of why that could be happening. I mean, it could be as simple as something like food sensitivities, right? Like there's just certain thing that you're eating in your diet, and you can even have delayed ones, right? So you're like, well, I ate this, I thought it was maybe wheat, or I eat gluten. I was fine the next day, but 3 days later I was bloated or puffy, and that you can have those delayed reactions to it. So it can be really challenging with that. There can be also like little minor infections. We see a lot with anytime we see bloating and things like that. There's a lot of times it's a gut infection, and a minor thing, like maybe it's something that's not going to like make you miss work, but it's keeping you inflamed, it's keeping your weight fluctuating. And when you eat certain things with that, the bacteria in your stomach release gas, and so you can get some of that. The other part about that, the other part you're asking about habit changing is just, it's a challenging thing, and we just got to try to find ways to help you set up habits that will stick. You know, like a lot of times people come in, they're like, oh, you know, I lose weight when I cut calories. Well, cutting calories, and they're like, but then I can't sustain that forever. And the research shows that calorie cutting is not really a sustainable way to lose weight. And so more so, we try to find like, well, what are the good foods? I want you to eat these foods, and you can eat as much of them as you want until you're full, and they're not going to make you gain weight. So there's a lot of habits in there, a lot of sleep habits, a lot of water habits, a lot of food habits that we look at as a base level, and then looking at little infections and things like that. And then also looking at blood work and things like so if we're worried about inflammation, let's run some basic blood work and see where our inflammation levels are. You know, do a trial run of a couple months and then run them again and say like, are they lower and your weight's still high? Like you just kind of start to play with multiple things there. But I don't know, did that answer your question well?
No, it does, yeah. Like, it's the consistency thing, but also that is something I kind of want to look into, like blood work. And then like for me, it's going to be like setting habits and winning the day before. So I think it is a combination of all of them.
Yeah.
So thanks for that.
Great. You're welcome. Yeah, you're welcome. Lorna,
So for setting habits and consistency, I found a book called Atomic Habits.
Oh, James Clear, I love him.
That was that really helped me find ways to make my habits more consistent.
Yeah, that's a great book. So there's a reference to a book called Atomic Habits by, what's his name? James Clear. Yeah, I've looked through that for sure. It is a good book.
Do you have anything to add to what I said?
Yeah, I guess just to kind of back up, I actually had someone this morning. My first patient of the day came in with a picture, and it was like literally like, just like you said, the bloated gut, right? It was like, this was me 2 days ago, and now they're like back down. In terms of like the pinpoint issue there, you hit on it, was like the gut bacteria thing. There's a common condition we call SIBO, which is small intestinal bacteria overgrowth. You also can sometimes see it with insulin resistance. But there's a couple of kind of more likely conditions that will cause that big bloating effect. And then they just kind of play a role into the overall kind of getting things back under control. And so just like you said, like running the blood work, checking where those levels are. For some, once those get out of balance, there really is a need for some very specific kind of treatment and care to get you past that like initial hurdle, so that your own habits have a way bigger effect in your life. So it's like, hey, sometimes we can help people take that big first step. Things calm down, bloating stops, and then sticking to the diet's easier, right? And then sticking to those routines are easier.
The other thing to add to that, like if it were SIBO, like he was talking about, is the really frustrating thing about that is like people are like, oh, eat a bunch of vegetables. Those are really good for you. And they can actually exacerbate the problem. So we're like, oh, I'm eating this really clean diet. And every time I eat a big salad, I just bloat. And that's because that's the bacteria eat that. So you make...
like an animal-based diet? Like,
well,
some of the questions like, is that good? Like, you know.
Is asking if an animal-based diet would be good. I mean, potentially. I think animal-based diets are great. I'm not into the full carnivore for like long-term. I think short-term there can be some really good therapeutic benefits. I'm really more like generally more like paleo, kind of some of both. But for I mean, I think there's benefits to both. To increasing more meat and just being more moderate with it. But with SIBO, there are certain cases that are intense enough that we actually reduce a lot of certain vegetables and fruits just to kind of start out the bacteria, like for a month period. It's what's called like a low FODMAP diet, FODMAP. But I don't always do that. A lot of times you can just clean up the diet and you can give some certain herbs and do some certain things to kind of clear it out without that. It's usually like a second step. Or if someone is like, every time they have a reaction to it, it's really, really bad, then maybe we'll start with that. But usually it's like, I don't go there unless we have to type thing, because it's a confusing diet. It's the hard. I've followed all the weird diets at some point or another in my life, and that's the hardest one to follow. So I usually don't go right to that. So if y'all are eating paleo and stuff, I think that's probably really good. Maybe removing food sensitivities from that too, if there are any.
No,
you're good.
I want to do the free consultation. And also, do y'all take insurance, or like I know sometimes with functional medicine, y'all don't do Blue Cross Blue Shield, or like it's all
Unfortunately, no.
Okay, cool. That's cool.
Yeah. So one of the questions there, because it's good, because we do. It's actually, I'm glad you pointed that out. We do a free consultation on purpose, kind of for that reason, to be able to answer people's very specific questions, kind of show them the pathway of what it is we would do. We're all of our pricing and everything is like very openly available. We let people know everything ahead of time for that reason, because in the functional medicine space, we're talking about blood work that's not covered by insurance. You're talking about types of treatments that aren't covered by insurance. We just want to be very, forthright, make sure people know what those look like. And so we always do that. The free consult, we can do it in person, we can do it on the phone, we can do video chat, and get into a little more details sometimes.
Does it include like anything with like getting on the scale, or checking blood pressure, like anything, or is it just talk? It's just consulting, like talking.
The first one is just talking and consulting, just the free one, or just that 15-minute like phone conversation of everything that's going on. But those are questions I'll commonly ask. Like if your concerns are about like weight and fluctuation, we'll be like, all right, well, because you know what your weight is, right? I mean, you've been on the scale. You might know your own blood pressure. That might be something you might not know. But then if we do it, we check that, in examination.
Like on the first visit.
In the first visit, and like see where that is.
This is something trying to get off of blood pressure medicine. This is something I don't want to depend on.
Yeah.
My wife is really encouraging me. So I mean, you're too young to like depend on that. So I'm trying to make lifestyle changes where I create those habits of consistency where I can holistically be healthy.
Yeah. That's awesome. And we also, in that consult, it gives us a chance to also talk about, you mentioned blood work and some of that stuff. So in that time too, we'll kind of talk through what we would think would be a good set of blood work to run, so that could all be run and done like before we ever sat down, versus having to come in and sit with us first and then go run off and then again. And so it's like by the time we get going, we're going.
Yeah. And he said he's had a blood pressure question too, and a lot of times in functional medicine, every time in functional medicine, but we would try to like figure out what the cause is. There's a number of different things that can cause blood pressure issues, and if we go back to eating and stuff, a lot of it can be some eating. There's a lot of different things, but trying to figure out why. Because if someone comes to us and they're like, "Listen, I'm on blood pressure medication. I don't want to be on it forever," and we got to go. Well, we got to get your blood pressure to go down before the medical doctor's going to take you off that, because we can't take people off drugs, but we do. Oftentimes people's blood pressure lowers or they get better, and whatever medication they don't need anymore, they just tell their doctor, and the doctor goes, well, cool, you don't have to take it anymore,
Yeah.
So we do see that. Yeah.
So would you all consider yourself primary care physicians? Because I heard you say the doctor, you're not doctor.
Medical doctor. So we're chiropractors. So we can't deal in the pharmaceutical world.
Okay.
Yeah.
So in a case where you offer, I guess, holistic practices that can help lower blood pressure medicine, then once he sees where he is consistently with blood pressure, he can say,
right.
Okay, I no longer need this.
Yeah, and that happens a lot. Like where people are like, I want to get off this. What can I do? Or I'll tell them like, hey, this has improved so much. You may consider talking to your doctor about this, and usually they're open to it as long as the numbers are looking better. As long as you have blood work or blood pressure, whatever to look at. Hey, look at how much I've improved. They usually don't mind. So,
Yeah. So we have lots. Yeah. So we do take that kind of holistic approach.
I didn't repeat that question either. I don't
Oh.
know.
Yeah.
Primary care.
Private care. Do we consider ourselves like primary care physicians? So what we do is we offer, just like you said, like kind of like a holistic approach to varying different issues and conditions, and so blood pressure, cholesterol, blood sugar stabilization, kind of using that lifestyle, herbs, supplementation, that combination to bring those things down, to lower them. Yeah. Yeah.
What else?
Yeah.
Got some internet questions?
Actually, to remember them off the top of my head, I just have that little sheet there.
Yeah, you don't have any?
Mm-mm.
Okay. Well, we didn't write down our questions from our online stuff, so we don't have them here. Do we have anywhere have those, or should we could get back into? Oh yeah, what you got?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Please.
With the functional medicine 1 hour session, new patient evaluation, what all does that include?
So the question was, with our functional medicine first visit, like the 1 hour session, what all does that include? So we already talked about the free consult. We like to start with that first, like either way, just because again, it makes sure we're all on the same like page of what it is that we do and like offer. Our first 1 hour visit, our entire, like it goes through, we kind of go more in depth into people's histories and like specifications about that. We go through our whole examination process, which can include things like you mentioned, weight and blood pressure and those kind of things. We also go through if there is blood work, if that's been run ahead of time, that's part of that examination process, is going through the blood work, the results of that, what things need to occur to improve that. Based on either current conditions in our examination process, we're also then talking about what needs to change with diet, and what kind of like what would be a good diet or like food plan for those and whatever you're working with. We're also talking about exercise routines, schedules. There's a lot I'll come back, but there's a lot in the exercise realm in terms of what your goals are and what you're trying to accomplish, whether it needs to be more high intensity, low intensity, things like that. So we go through that process as well. We also do lay out as well, like the supplementation process, mentioning depending on the condition that's happening, but things like SIBO as an example, or even like talk about elevated blood pressure. There's certain things that do require using some of the herbs and supplements in order to bring those things down and improve them and get that effect that you need. So that plan is like laid out all in that first visit. Mm-hmm.
Do you take the herbs simultaneously while still being on the blood pressure medicine?
Most of the time.
Most of the time.
Yeah. His question was, can you take herbs while you're on certain medications? And most of the time it's okay. There are certain interactions, but I would say 99% of the time something. Yeah.
And so we do have to be aware of those interactions. And like you said before about with the blood pressure, using that as an example, you're trying to figure out like why your blood pressure is like elevated, because there's varying reasons why it can be high. And people talk about stress all the time, but that is true. Like your sympathetic response can be engaged and your body's just running high levels. That's like one possibility. Sometimes it can be liver or even kidney function. And so with that herbal protocols, we're going after some of that like causation. So if it's liver, we're going to do like a liver detox, which really has very little effect directly on the heart. We're not giving you something else to lower your blood pressure. We're clearing out the liver, and the result of that will be that the blood pressure comes down and like de-stresses the body, and your body's able to release that tension, and then that comes down. And that's why we're able to do them both simultaneously. Yeah.
So based on the blood work, you all will be able to pinpoint what those particular causes are in terms of what his individual reasons for high blood pressure would be.
Yeah.
Well, our question was, so based on blood work, can you determine why that blood pressure is high? I would say most of the time. Sometimes it requires more digging. Sometimes it requires some trial and error. Mm-hmm. But yeah, there's some big things that you can look at just in blood work right away, that if they're high, you can assume that that's one of the reasons why the blood pressure is high. Mm-hmm. So like we look at blood sugar, we look at kidneys, we look at liver, like he was talking about. If those things don't show, you can also then start to look at like, is there some random infection here? There's a couple different infections that if they get in your bloodstream will skyrocket your blood pressure. Mm-hmm. Usually in that case, I think we're seeing more like, hey, blood pressure was fine, and then it was not, like it was way high. It wasn't like a gradual increase. But I'd say most commonly, at least from what I understand, is it's usually a blood sugar problem. like higher blood sugar. And so then if we go in there and we see that in blood work, then we go, yeah, hey, we're going to change our dietary habits, change our diet, and we're going to see these things go down and blood pressure should go down. And you probably know more about this than me, but I see it takes a while for blood pressure to go down. Like it's not like, hey, in 2 months you're going to be better. But like I have a patient that he started coming in probably April. And really all he wanted to do was change his blood pressure, and his blood sugar was slightly elevated. And I just gave him this dietary plan, and he's like, this is horrible. And I'm like, hey, I think this will help. And he's like, all right, I'll give you 3 months. And at 3 months, it had dropped like 10 points, but now it's been 6 months and it's dropped to normal. Like it went from 150 to over 100 to now it's 180, really close to normal now. And he's like, I don't know if he's like, I might let it go back up a little bit and change my diet just a little bit back to what I wanted it to be. But he's like, I know it works. And so it takes a while. It's just those habits, the same way it kind of built up over time, it's got to come back down. But something like SIBO, a lot of times, like sometimes within a month, you can, if that's our problem that we start working with, you can see that go down quickly. There's certain things that will snap back quicker than others, but blood pressure is usually a gradual lowering. Yeah. And we check on those patients. I'll check them once a month, like keep checking it with them. And sometimes patients check it too much at home. Yeah. They're like, I checked it 4 times today. Yesterday, 3 of them were good. And then, you're just like, just don't do it until you come back.
Yeah. Just let it calm down.
Yeah.
And one of the cool things with the functional medicine training, because we look at blood work, you're talking about that like analysis of blood work, because we're trained to look at levels in a very different way. So when blood work comes back, it's very common that people are having high blood pressure. They are having these issues, but the blood work looks within normal ranges or maybe just slightly off of normal ranges. And so in the medical field at large, it kind of gets looked at as like, this is normal, this is okay. We have now identified, it's not us, but like the medical field at large has identified like levels of disease states down to functional levels, down to optimal levels. And so we can identify, and that helps us too, further with some of the more kind of simple traditional blood work. We're able to look at that and go, okay, these are indicators of this really is on the high end range, and this indicates this, and that could be part of your blood pressure issue. So we're like looking for that to come back where it needs to be.
And I'd say if I was going to run a full like cardiovascular panel that would look at that, like all those things, we ran it all at once, might be $800, $900. But I think it's sometimes people just want to run everything, and that's fine. But we also can break it down into chunks, right? Like here are the things it's most likely is, let's check there. And then, it's like you're going fishing. You didn't get a bite, you like kind of cast back, go do a little bit more. Or you find something that's like sort of an issue and you go, let's look a little deeper, let's run some different tests, So we don't necessarily have to start with this. So I guess to go back to your blood work question, you should be able to find it if you look hard enough in the blood work, right? Just depending on how much money you want to spend and how far you want to go with it. We also have other techniques that we use in office, like reflex testing and stuff like that can tell us a lot. It's not diagnostic testing, but we can say, oh, look, like these kidney reflexes are off. Let's do some things to balance that out and just see how it looks in 2 months, And that might be a cheaper option. So there's a lot of different ways to kind of look at it. Yeah. Good questions though, for sure.
Yeah. That was gonna go. I just dive in that second part deeper a little bit with the reflex testing, which is one of the cool tools of us. We're kind of bridging the gap just enough of kind of more like traditional like testing with blood work and all that stuff, and the more like kind of alternative testing that we've been like trained in. There's a lot that you can learn from just the human body and how it responds and the way that we like work and check things. And that's part of that examination process where you can really get a good idea of what hormones are running higher, or how's this responding, how's that responding. And that's one of the benefits of kind of combining those two sides together a little bit, the holistic and the functional medicine, using those two to be able to kind of very specifically figure out what's going on with someone. It's pretty neat.
That's the fun part.
That is the fun part.
Right. What else? You guys got any other questions?
How about questions about the sunshine actually setting your circadian rhythm?
Oh my god.
This one's his.
Oh my god.
The question was, what about does sunshine really reset circadian rhythms? And I'm just going to turn this over to Cole because this is his like
obsession.
This is his joy. This is why he lives out on the rock climbing slopes.
Yeah, that's true.
You don't call them slopes, do you?
No, but it's almost like I paid you to ask this question, but I didn't.
There's this guy out there called Huberman.
Andrew Huberman. Yeah, Andrew Huberman.
Yeah, he's all about
Yep.
And figured, what the heck? Give it
Yeah.
a shot,
Stare
right?
at the sun. No, I'm just kidding.
So I started walking in the morning at
Yep.
7, and I walked towards the sun. And now I wake up every morning at 7.
Yeah.
No alarm clock.
Yeah.
Man, that stuff works.
Yeah, it really does. I would say that that's maybe as important as diet is to be congruent with what the sun is doing outside. That's why I'm wearing these dorky glasses that are making everything. Can you see they're orange?
Yeah.
So they're making it not be so like these lights are telling us that it's the middle of the day.
Yeah.
This is like my cheat code for, so Andrew Huberman tells you to wear these too. But yeah, so our body is really, that's the ultimate clock, right? Like the clock that we put on the wall, the clock that we follow, that doesn't really mean anything to our body. It's the light and dark cycle that means a lot. And so you can see people, like there's a doctor I follow, neurosurgeon, amazing doctor, brilliant, kind of came up with all these protocols for people to try. And he took a patient that had an autoimmune disease, and she was type 2 diabetic and a number of different things. This is like 20 years ago. He's like, I have this theory about light. If we can just get people back congruent with what the light would be when we would have lived outside, 1,000 years ago or whatever, will their health return? Will these conditions that are unhealable fix themselves? Her autoimmune condition completely went away in 6 weeks, and no one else had been able to help her. And then she lost 80 pounds in 6 months and reversed her type 2 diabetes without diet change.
Just by going outside.
So I think his protocol for her was watch the sun come up and go down with your eyeballs, and then spend a certain amount of time outside per day. Wear blue blockers at night. Have no fake light at night. So like my house, this sounds so weird. We have red lights at night because they're like less offensive to your hormonal system. Yeah, and she dropped all that weight, reversed an autoimmune disease, which, autoimmune disease in the literature is an incurable condition, right? So maybe she's just in permanent remission. Maybe she's cured. It's like in the medical world, you can't say an autoimmunity is cured, but she's never had issues again, according to this case study. And there's a lot of stories since then that he's done. And so I've gotten really into his work. It's got Jack Kruse. Jack Kruse. He's a neurosurgeon. He's kind of a crazy conspiracy theorist guy too, but he's really smart. Yeah. He would like it. Yeah. Yeah.
You like it?
Lights in your house.
What about him?
Why?
All of your.
No, so like if we have friends over and we don't want to scare them, we have like normal lights. But she asked, why do we have, or what about the red lights in our house? Like I just go buy red light bulbs, and so like half our lights, like one light switch will turn on red, one light switch will. It's like our bedroom lights are all red, unless like my wife's trying to put on makeup or something.
Yellow lights. I have very yellow lights.
Red would be better.
Huh?
Red would be better.
Red
Red is better. Yeah. But it's like Lowe's, like $4. Just like a regular light bulb. There's coated red. Yeah, so it's like a little weird cheat code, and these these are just called blue blockers, so you can just get these online.
Getting sleepy before you want to go to bed?
But then the question is, why don't you want to go to bed earlier? Yes.
Do you find yourself getting sleepy?
Yeah.
Before you would normally want to go to bed? Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. But I want to go to bed early because I know it's good for me. So.
How important is sleep, and how many hours of sleep do you need?
He asked how important is sleep and how many hours of sleep do you need. Sleep is incredibly important. It's really important for our immune system. It's really important, obviously, for our energy production. It's basically like the body's reset. The amount of sleep, it differs for different people. I'd say, 7 to 9 is what I always tell people.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of am on the 7 train. Like when I go to bed, I'm definitely not sleeping past 8 hours, but we want really, really quality sleep. There's ways to track that. And I would say going to bed at the right time, going back to the circadian rhythm question, is good. Like I have people if you go to bed at 2 in the morning and wake up at 10, that is not the same as going to bed at 10 o'clock at night, waking up at 6 or whatever.
This throws me off, man. Time change.
It is, yeah.
I've been getting up in the middle of the night.
Yeah.
What's going on?
Yeah. Yep.
Yep.
That's super important. Yeah.
Time change will throw you off. It also is actually crucially important for the brain and the restorative processes of the brain. And so decreased sleep for long periods of time, like over a lifetime, right, is definitely a contributing factor to your Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, dementia. Yep. Because it's literally like at night is when your brain is able to return over a little bit, repair, like remove its byproducts, clear them out of your system and kind of reset. If you don't do that, you get these buildup of byproducts in the brain, and it doesn't take very long for those to cause inflammation, to keep people their brain's too hyped up. hyped up state. And so it's interesting because there's a lot of these things that are a little bit of a catch-22 a little bit, where sometimes like the more your sleep's thrown off and the less you're sleeping, and then all of a sudden you struggle more and more to sleep, and it starts to get in our head a little bit. But that's where your practices of watch the sun come up, watch the sun go down, like can pretty quickly reset those clocks and those systems, which is pretty amazing.
And to add to that too, I meant to say this earlier. So I have a like a time change protocol, like when you go fly overseas or whatever. And a big part of it is just no sunglasses. Like immediately wherever you fly to, whatever time zone you're going to avoid jet lag, just have your eyes exposed to sun and your skin exposed to sun. So if you land in Europe in the morning, you should just get outside as quickly as you can. You don't have to be like in the sun, like getting sunburned or anything, but like just have your skin exposed as much as you can and no sunglasses. And it's amazing how quickly you'll respond from being 10 hours off. Mm-hmm. Like I have every patient I've done this with, they're like, this is so significant. I can't believe I flew back from Italy this year and worked a full day the next day. And it was like probably like 4:00. I felt a little bit weird, but other than that, I felt normal. Mm. And everybody on the plane hated me because I had the window open the entire time. Like everybody else on the entire plane, it was shut, dark, and it was like in there. The stewardess was like, "Will you shut that?" I was like, "Do I have to?" She's like, "Will you shut it halfway?" I was like, "Okay, I'll shut it halfway." People are trying to sleep. I'm like, "I'm doing it all for your good. We all need to adjust to the time zone we're going to." Yeah.
Kids being out in nature, how important is that? Like I know there's a lot of discussion about kids sitting in a classroom for several hours versus being outside in sunlight. I'm just curious your thoughts and just opinion on kids' activity and being outdoors.
Yeah, so kids' activity, being outdoors in nature, how important is that versus the comparison, which is kids sitting inside all day, for classroom settings and school and everything. Yeah,
in front of computers.
And in front of computers and things. Yep. So it is so important with kids spending time outside. There's a very well documented, like it's almost like kind of healing effect to being out in nature. They call it like nature bathing in a way, right? And so you get out because the way it actually syncs with we talk about circadian rhythms because of the light. But then you also talk about our nervous system and what we call like the fight or flight response versus the parasympathetic, which is like the rest and digest response. In time and nature dramatically increases the parasympathetic or rest and digest functions of the human body. And so it is something that, talk about resets, that can pretty quickly reset and calm people's stress levels down, kind of engage again parasympathetic and calm that fight or flight response down. And there's few things, people fight a lot of times to find things to make that happen. And there's very few things that can do it as potently as just time in nature.
Grounding.
And which is, and your ground, which has a grounding effect, when you go out in nature.
If you're barefoot or touching the earth.
Touching the earth, and so kids really do need that. I mean, right nowadays, it's like a ton of stimulation. Like you talk about, anywhere from, just the sounds, but like the screens and all that stuff. And there's a need to like reset that. And there's a need to reset that on a daily basis as best as we can. It's not just like a here and there thing. It's kind of all the time.
Yep.
You'll notice a change in behavior with kids. Yeah.
Well, I was going to say, and part of what we were talking about, that guys having people be outside as much as you can, and the jet lag thing I was just talking about. That's like the clock for our body. It just syncs our body with what's actually going on, like in the earth.
Yes, Lauren.
Good question.
So do you think grounding mats are beneficial?
The question is, do we think grounding mats are beneficial? I've had many clients ask me that, and I know it's kind of like a thing going on. I would say my simple answer to that, because I'm not totally sure on how effective grounding mats are, what I can say for sure is that true grounding is like way more beneficial. I'll put it that way. So to take the minute, and it only doesn't take very long to actually ground, but if you just walk outside barefoot, you can get away with it, even like going out, they said, touching the ground with your hands if you want, grabbing a tree, things like that. The effect that will have just happens so fast.
I think I did it accidentally because Fred didn't like raised bed gardens. So in the spring, I'm always crawling around on my hands and
perfect.
planting stuff and taking care of the garden. And it really does make a difference being out there in the earth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't.
And more than
gloves. I'm crawling around
And
I think it's that accidental.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know about grounding at the time.
it wasn't an accident. Your body knew, right?
Your body knew it wanted to be out in the gardens in the dirt.
Yeah. There's some benefits to other than grounding too, to being in the dirt a little bit. She was saying she like feels good when she gardens, when she's like grounding from that perspective. But yeah, just being like your hands dirty, and it's good to touch the dirt, get the microbes from the
I was gonna say your microbiome, like
Yeah.
your gut biome.
Yeah.
There's whole products now that have come out in the past like several years that are really, we joke around and just call them dirt water, because that's practically what they are, because like we used to be exposed way more to dirt, and there's certain biome like microbes that are in dirt our gut really needs. It's part of that microbiome and the whole process. And so now we can instead of playing in dirt, we can buy bottles of dirt water,
Expensive dirt
very
water.
expensive dirt water, and they're phenomenal. They're good. I don't mean to make fun of them too much, but yeah, there's ways to get that. You in the back.
Can you talk a little bit about what processes go wrong when your circadian clock is off? Like, what are some of the things that don't work as well?
So what processes go wrong when your circadian clock or rhythm is off?
You want me to get that? So, it's a general question. My general answer would be like basically everything. The things that we see, because it's such an important part of health, I would say that the things that we see the most are like blood sugar, weight gain, stress, people being stressed out, and things like that. Because we see that artificial light stimulates our major stress hormone cortisol, so that goes up. When that goes up, our weight will go up, our blood sugar will go up. So you see things, a lot of probably the three things that I would say the most. People being more stressed out, people sleep being off, right? Yeah, when your cortisol's up, your sleep goes off. So just kind of, really generally, it's a good question, generally everything. But
Eventually your blood pressure.
Blood pressure, yeah, exactly.
Eventually it gets to your blood pressure.
Yeah. So, good question.
So it's kind of like what's that?
Technology stresses us out.
Yeah.
This is a true statement.
In so many ways, too, right?
In so many ways.
Right.
Technology stresses us
Even
out.
without looking at what the actual technology is, just the light from the technology. Yeah.
It's us.
What were you saying, Ryan?
Ever sat out camping, sat at a campfire and just got really sleepy at like 7 o'clock at night, and it's not even time to be asleep.
Yeah.
The nature and yellow flames, and you just stare at them.
Yep.
It's pretty nice.
It's pretty nice.
Yeah, it makes you think, how late should we really be staying up, right? She was saying she goes to bed so much earlier when she's camping.
Yep. Oh man, I used to go to bed at 9 o'clock every night. Couldn't stay awake past that. Then I got married, and it all stopped. We'll throw the kids in there too. We'll blame them too. Okay. Well, I think you had another question.
I was just gonna say that it's kind of like a really like top-down thing, like having the circadian rhythms kind of tells your body how to live correctly for the day. Like it signals a lot of important topics.
Yeah, he said the circadian rhythm is kind of a top-down thing, and how the circadian rhythms kind of control other things going on. Yeah, the other systems. All right.
That's a lot of the, like in my handouts and the stuff that I talk to people about, when we talk about diabetes and blood sugar and things like that, it's a big part of it. Like I had a patient not long ago who came in and he eats an incredibly clean diet, and a diet that I would say is very low carbohydrate, and like things that I would tell someone who's pre-diabetic or diabetic that they have to go on. He's already eating it. And the next thing, so all the questioning, we're trying to figure all this out, and all the questioning led us to, it's like, well, what do you do for work? And he's like, well, I'm a truck driver and I drive at night.
Mm-hmm.
So he's up all night and sleeps during the day. And you're like, you may not even have to change your diet. You just might have to quit your job, which I don't know which one's worse. But
If your job is making you sick,
Leave it.
Yeah. So he's working on it.
He's working on
He
it.
hasn't quit yet, but he's working on it.
So,
what you got?
What helps with growth pain that doesn't make it like hurt as bad?
You probably have a better answer for that.
yeah, that's a solidly good question, my friend. That was awesome. So what helps with growing pain? so it doesn't hurt as bad. Yeah. So from an easy kind of supplement standpoint, the two things that we kind of make sure is vitamin D is one. And then the other one is like a mineral product, calcium being one of those minerals, but like an all-inclusive kind of mineral product, like calcium, magnesium, potassium, sodium, all that stuff. So there is I'm going to give you a long answer here a little bit, buddy, but there is a gland called the parathyroid gland that controls how fast calcium kind of goes into bone or comes in and out of bone. And
which is what makes our bones.
Which is what makes our bones, yeah. The calcium and the different minerals go in and out of bone. And so when kids hit like phases where they grow fast, like really quick, really fast, the body's trying to keep up with that process, and that gland is trying to keep up with that process. And as far as we can tell, growing pains kind of indicate that the body's struggling a little bit to keep up with that process because the bone's growing so fast. And so those are the two main things that it needs to be supported, is vitamin D and then that mineral product.
And K2.
And K2.
You just got to quit growing so fast.
No, keep it going.
Arms will be painful, like the waking up in his sleep sometimes.
Yeah. And so to go back to a little bit on those, so vitamin D, back to the sunlight. So our body creates vitamin D from exposure to sunlight. And one of the cool things about that guy's work, Jack Kruse, amongst others, is talking about that, because there's a question of like how much time do we have to be exposed to the sun in order for our body to create enough vitamin D. And one of the findings has been that when you actually get this early sunlight exposure early in the morning, it's much more efficient at creating vitamin D, which is not what we thought for a long time. We always thought like high sun, as hot as possible pretty much, but there's an effectiveness to doing that. In fact, one of my few clients I've ever seen, because they did not want to supplement with vitamin D, and I've had many people try this, and the only one I've seen be successful is that she got up and walked every morning with the rising sun. And so she was outside for only about 20, 30 minutes every morning with the rising sun.
Wasn't that even in the winter too?
And it was in the winter, and we actually tracked her vitamin D, and it took about 3 months, which is usually what it takes for me to do it with supplementation to get vitamin D levels up to like a healthy level. And she did it in 3 months in the middle of the winter. And so it flipped my perspective. I was like, whoa, I guess we can get it here at this like where we live. It's just you got to do it with the morning sun. So that's where we get that. Vitamin, either your minerals in general, as a lot of that comes from your green vegetable category, and then healthy meats, especially for your K2, is your healthy meats, which healthy meats is really kind of all meats really do fall in the healthy meat category. There was a question in years past of like red meat, is it good or not good? There's more of a question over the quality of meat than necessarily whether meat is healthy or not. So quality meat it means that meat's going to be healthy. So red meat is good, chicken is good, fish, phenomenal, lamb, good. Even pork's not one I go crazy on, but even pork, if it's a quality from quality farmers, quality raised, then that can be good as well.
And by quality, he means like finding things like grass-fed beef and like organic certificates. There are ways to kind of, if animals are raised in a way that is it's reasonably priced if you were going to compare it to buying it at the store, like fully grass-fed. Yeah. Yeah, he's great.
Yeah, we'll get that to you. So, but that was a fantastic question.
Yeah, good job
over there, man. Okay.
When I was 15, I started, went through puberty at 15, and I grew 1 foot in a year.
Grew 1 foot in a year.
And I'm telling you, talk about growing.
Yeah.
My dad used to come in and rub my legs because I was just growing so fast, nothing could keep up.
Yeah.
The other thing was when you you start growing really fast, you end up lumpy. And your knees get bruised, you go past
Yeah.
the table, you don't know how big the body is.
It's like,
And my son was going through that,
Mhm.
and the dietitian recommended that I put him in karate. And it kind of helped him learn how big is his body.
Yeah.
Kind of learn control over these gangly arms and legs.
I'm going to repeat that. So, because one of the observations was, is as kids hit those really fast growth spurts, you start seeing a lack of awareness sometimes of the body a little bit. Sometimes you'll bang elbows, bang knees, and a suggestion has been made to put your child into karate. It's all about proprioception and kind of like the brain-body connection. And so any of those, whether it be sports like basketball or dance or karate, or even some of your own practices of really just trying to integrate that like brain to body connection as you grow and get taller. So, but awesome. I think we're going to kind of wind down right there, coming to the top of the hour. Like, thank you guys so much for being here and the questions. Thank you guys for kind of chiming in online. And we will see you back.
And sorry if we didn't get to your online questions.
Online
we didn't
questions.
Let them down. We're missing a teammate tonight that usually gives us those.
Yeah. So we'll do better next time. So
Cool. Thank you.
So you're going to
Yeah.
plan in December?
What's that?
Yeah.
Of course.
Of course.
I mean, right? Or I'm speaking out of turn here. We're doing one in December, right?